الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه واستنى بسنته واهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. I say اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله
وصحبه أجمعين. Maybe we can do Salah Ibrahimiyya together, the second half of the Shahud. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم آمين. The reason I said that is I find a masjid full of people, men and women from different walks of life, different ethnicities, and who gathered us together? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, obviously Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, through the love of the Prophet, gathered us together. So even so many years later, the effect of that love is still bringing people together. The love of Allah and the love of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So today, you know, when you want to talk about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's so many things you want to say. You don't know where to start, where to end, what to do, what to this. But I said, let me talk in a way that is so relevant to us, and especially to our children. And let me try to treat something, because when I talk to the people about the Prophet ﷺ, when I'm talking to them, whether old or young, this is not a new generation problem, nor it's an iPhone generation problem. Whether you're talking about the elders or the youth, the men or the women, I see a disconnect. Like I'm talking to the person and I can feel that the person in front of me is not feeling it. It's not getting it. It's not, you know, we talk about the Prophet and they look at you like, okay. So you have one of two options. Either say that person is not good, or you say, let me find out what's the reason people are disconnected, and let me try to stitch it, because it's not necessarily Muslims are bad, or they don't want to talk about the Prophet, or they don't feel the connection. It's maybe something is disconnected. So that's where my mind went, because if we can solve this problem, then you can do things on your own, right? You can read, you can explore, you can talk, you can grow in your faith on your own once the connection is created. And it's the same thing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the same thing with His Prophet, it's the same thing with the deen of Islam. So, subhanAllah, whenever we talk in this time about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are, what I wanted to, why do we need a prophet? This is the first question that I hear from our youth. And if you stop for a second, like, why do we need a prophet? Why there has been prophets and messengers since the beginning of time? Let me tell you something without talking about religion. We are social beings. We are formed, shaped, and molded because of two things: nature and nurture. Nature, DNA. Mom, you are half your dad and half your mom. Literally, subhanAllah, these chromosomes that meet each other at conception, this is who you are from nature. Think right now with me when it comes to nurture. From the second you're born, what are you doing the first 2 years of your life? You're looking around before you start talking. You're looking, recording, and then your parents start getting worried about you. He's not talking, she's not talking, he's only saying Baba, Mama, right? And then a year later, a year and a half, 2 years later, they're like, oh my God, why did we make dua that he talks, right? We can't even stop him from talking right now. What were you doing the first 2 years of your life? You were what? You were recording, and naturally, you're mimicking. So do you see this in your DNA? How I become a human, how you become a human is through looking at someone else and learning how to function. You're looking at, as a child, at who? You're looking at your mom and dad. If one of them is not there, you look at the other, right? So this is what you're doing, naturally, organically. That's who we are as human beings. As we're growing up, we're looking at someone and we're mimicking. Role model in our lives. whether we like it or not, that's how we are. And by the way, within the animal kingdom, there is also species like that. Monkeys do that, elephants do that, right? But there's other creation Allah shows us. The spider lays the eggs, dies, the kids grow up, no need for parents. Allah shows you both options, right? Then that baby spider grows up, the second it lays the eggs, it's dead. And it moves on, subhanAllah. So for us, we're associated. So you grow up. What happens after the first 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? You're like the shadow of your mother. You're constantly holding on to her, right? And as you grow up and you start going to school, I still remember when I went to school, I loved some of my teachers, and I just wanted to impress them. I wanted to make them feel happy because I fell in love with them. So when you know how there's that teacher that made you hate math for life, right? You became a hopeless case after that. Or the teacher that made you love math and you became a physicist or nuclear physicist. What happens? You have a teacher that comes in your life that makes you fall in love with the subject because you love them. And then as a kid, you want to impress that teacher. And then you start looking up to the teacher. Now you're adding. And you're growing up, you start adding uncles and aunts. You know, if you're a boy, you start looking at your uncles on both sides. There's that uncle that makes the whole family laugh. And you say, oh my God, that's a good role model. Like, I want to be like, and you see the other uncle that when he shows up, everyone runs away, right? And the same with the aunts, the same thing. You know, you're observing and you're starting to what? You're constantly forming your personality and making your choices based on what you're observing. Then you grow up older, and now friends come into your life. And when friends come into your life, you start looking at your friends. There is that kid who's very popular at school, and they're like really, everybody want to be around them. Do I want to be like that friend? Or do I want to be like the other friend? Or I want to be like the smartest, or the most popular, or the most successful? You cannot stop yourself from looking for role models from the day you're born. As you're growing, it's just who's a role model, you become one. Then you are living in the society, and then you hear people talk about different things, even when it doesn't have to do with life, when we talk about sports, right? If you don't have, you have role models. If you want to play basketball, this is who you're looking at. It's just natural. Even in sports, you're looking for a role model, and a role model inspires you, right? That's what happens to us as human beings. Okay, you look at your dad. Your dad is a doctor. Your mom is a doctor, right? You must be from Pakistan, right? So the idea is, what? You're looking at them and then you want to become a doctor. You want to become like your dad or like your mom or like your uncle, right? So this is what's happening. They impact you. Now for the rest of your life, you're going to engage. Count with me. 4 years pre-med school. 4 years medical school. 3 years basic residency. How far are we? 11 years. You're still nobody. Then you're going to go for another what? Fellowship. Another 2-3 years. Then you're going to go through specialty. And then now, after 16 years, okay, mashallah, you have a specialty, you're desired in this. Look what happens because of a role model. In your life, if you trace yourself back, no one became a doctor because he's never seen a doctor in their life. No one became a lawyer because they've seen no lawyers in their lives. It's always, you saw something, you saw somebody, your father was a very good businessman, you said, I'm just going to be a businessman like him. And the impossible becomes impossible. Your mother, your uncle, someone in your radar screen that inspired you to become who you are today. So when we say, why prophets? It's not just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do something unnatural, like not part of who you are. Actually, this is what you're doing anyway. You are in the business of, even right now, when I have people who work in Apple, just last time I talked to a brother who's with us. Oh brother, where are you? Still in Google? Yes, I'm Google, but I'm leaving. Why are you leaving? I'm having my own startup. Oh, mashallah, takbir. Where did he get the idea? From his environment, from his surrounding, right? So, in basketball, you got your role models, no problem. In whatever you wish in life, you got your models. But then the question, the general role model, the role model of all other role models, because you will find a doctor who's very specialized, but they have a very bad social life, right? They have a very bad social life. You will find a lawyer that some people love him, so many people like became corrupt because being a lawyer, right? You will find, so if you're gonna follow to the teeth, you're gonna get lost. So the idea of who's your, in general, role model is the question here. And that's why the first thing that when we say Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah tells us in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. For you, in the Messenger of Allah was a great role model. You understand right now that each one of us here sitting down, whether you think you're religious or not, whether you think you have a role model or not, you're actually living based on someone else's role model. You're being inspired by your mom and dad and uncles and aunts and the people that met and the teachers and this and this and this and that, and they keep on shaping your life. Even today, they're shaping your life. Even if you're 60 years old and 80 years old, you still have someone who's a role model. So it's very natural to us. So Allah Azza wa Jal sends us a role model that talks about, that is a role model in every way of life. Now, having the issue of role model, the next question is, there's still a disconnect. Okay, we get the role model issue, thank you very much, alhamdulillah. But then there is a disconnect. Whenever we talk about the Prophet ﷺ, people are still not feeling it. So as you start asking, why the disconnect? What's people not feeling? Why are they not getting more engaged and involved with everything that is going around us right now? And one of the things that keep come to us is like naturally, oh, this was 1400 years ago, and it was like so long time, and now we are here, and how could that be relevant to me, and this and that. You hear that from the young and from the old. You know, I had to trim down this lecture so that it doesn't overload, but I think our next Sira program on Friday is what, November 7th, brother? Yeah? November 9th? It's on a Thursday or on a Friday, right? So inshallah that's the second. But let me tell you something. It's all times. Okay, let me tell you something religious and something from reality. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is alive. Where is he? In Mecca. What is he going through? Hard time. So Allah wants to give him something to give him patience. What does Allah inspire to him? Stories of prophets that happened thousands of years before him. Allah inspires to the Prophet the story of Yusuf. Do you know approximately how early Yusuf came before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Approximately 1600 years. Some people say more, but they go all the way up to 2400 years. So right now, we're talking about the Prophet who came what? 1400 years. When the Prophet was alive, do you know who Allah was talking to him about? Someone who came 60. Do you know who's the closest Prophet to him? 600 years. Because in 610, Rasulullah received the revelation. Let's say Jesus was raised at age 33, so the year 33 he was raised. 600 years. Why? Because let me tell you something. The same thing that makes human beings happy today is the same things that made them happy 1,000 years ago. The same thing that makes people sad and depressed and so disappointed today is the same thing that was making them sad and depressed 1,000 years ago or from the time of Adam alayhi salam. The same thing that stresses people out. What's stressing? Usually stress comes from family, right? From health, from what? From finances. Guess what? Same thing has been happening. So every generation, when they come, they say, oh, we're a new generation. We're not like any generation before us. So the youth say that, not realizing that their father said the same thing, and their grandfather said the same, and the great-grandfather, every generation say, oh, time has changed. Oh, it's so different than before. Oh my, no. It's the same thing has been going on again and again and again. Last 15 years, the iPhone shows up, right? And people start communicating differently and this and that. But even with the iPhone, the same thing. Someone you love passes away, you're sad. Nothing changed. You make a business deal and it works so beautifully and you make a lot of money, you're happy and excited. Same thing. Right? Whether you're driving a camel or you're driving a car, right? Whether you're driving a horse or you're driving a Tesla, it's the same thing. The horse is not you and you're not the horse. Tesla is not you and you're not Tesla. You're separate, right? And the same thing that makes you happy, excited, the same dreams that every human has. What are our dreams? We're so predictable, right? What are you doing? I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a good, beautiful family. I want to live long. I want to live healthy. Same prediction. Same thing, the same dreams. What dreams do you have that others don't? What? You want to jump from a plane, skydiving? Go ahead. People had dangerous sports from the time, before the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So does time really make a difference? There's another presentation that I have, we don't have it today. I will walk you through what the Prophet ﷺ saw with his own eyes. So as if you're living at the time of the Prophet and you're looking at the world. So in that presentation, we look at hairstyles at the time of the Prophet, clothing at the time of the Prophet, tattoos at the time of the Prophet, body piercing at the time of the Prophet, clothing and hairstyle at the time of the Prophet. What was the trends at the time of the... You know how, when you look at the fashion, they say, oh, the 60s are back, right? And the 40s are back, and the 70s are back. Well, guess what? The 600s are back. The 700s are back. You think, oh my God, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the time is different, and you just, how can you be? Okay, if you were the friend of the Prophet ﷺ, what you would see in Mecca is exactly what you would see today. And what we're not realizing, for us who live in the West, who live in a non-Muslim country, right? Because every time you imagine the times of the Prophet, what are you imagining? What are you imagining? Medina, like our Munshid was in, right? Medina, Prophet, Sahaba, all Muslims, Masjid, oh my God, so everything is perfect. Well, let me refresh for you what you already know. Rasulullah ﷺ was born in a Jahiliyyah society. How long did he live before he received the revelation? 40 years. There goes 2/3 of his life are gone. Out of 63, 4 years. Then he lives in Mecca for 13 years. Majority are what? Non-Muslims, right? Out of 10,000 dwellers in Mecca, do you know how many believed? 100. Do you know what's the percentage? 1%. Do you know how many people lived around Mecca? al-Qura wa man hawlaha. 30,000 people. If you add 10,000 to 30,000, total is 40,000. If you see how many people believed, 100, 110, muhajireen, who went to Abyssinia and then came to Medina, total number, 100, 110, maybe 120 max. You understand? Majority of the society, not Muslim. 13 years in Mecca. Rasulullah now, when he left from Mecca to Medina, how old is he? How old? 53. What is left? 10 years. He moves to Medina. Do you know that majority of Medina were not Muslims? Until the Battle of the Ditch and then the Battle of Khaybar, that's when the number of Muslims became the number of more than non-Muslims. The last 3 years of the life of the Prophet is what you imagine the Prophet lived his entire life. So for you, if you're born and raised in America, congratulations. You understand the Prophet more than anyone else. And the Prophet understands you more than anyone else. More than your parents, because you know what? Your parents were born and raised in a Muslim country. Rasulullah was not born and raised in a Muslim country. Rasulullah lived his entire life. And we think, oh, the people are different at that time. Let me tell you something. People were not different. Change? The people were not different. Next slide. Yes. The people at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. What was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ? Who are the people? People who are, we had Jews, we had Christians, we had lots of atheists and people who don't care about religion or God. You know what the problem? May Allah help our youth. They're surrounded by people who don't care. Do you know that most of Meccans didn't care? Do you think that they were so devoted to their idols? No. They were so devoted to the Prophet they made out of their idols. Money. Do Do you know how much they were not so devoted? You know, the youth never talked about religion in Mecca. They looked at the fathers and they said, okay, as long as money is coming, I have no complaints. Do you know how much Meccans didn't care about their idols? This is how much they didn't care. They came to the Prophet when they couldn't stop him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Said, hey man, let's reason. We worship one God, your God, Allah, 1 year. You worship our idols 1 year. Can we just meet in the middle? Does that sound to you like someone devoted to their religion? Does that sound to you like someone who cares? So when you say, Shaykh, you talk about God, Prophet, most of people around us, they don't care. Well, guess what? Most people around the Prophet and the youth around the Prophet, they don't care. They didn't care. That's exactly the same. They were not religious at all. And we're talking about religion was like, why are you talking about religion? Religion is for old people. Let's have fun. Let's go and have fun. So when you look, who's surrounding the Prophet ﷺ? Pagans, who are not really pagans, like they really didn't care about the worship of the idols. Atheists, agnostics. Do you know that Allah answers the questions of atheists in the Quran? Agnostics in the Quran? Jews and Christians? People who don't prescribe to a religion? Do you know that there were temples for angels? They worship temples for the jinn. And yes, there was the devil worshipping. You know, today it's a secret society. They call it the devil temples. Do you know that they worship shaitan? And Allah mentioned that in the Quran, that they worship shaitan and they worship the jinn. So all the crazy stuff, every day there is a new idea, all existed at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's not so much different, right? So when you think of that, the culture at that time, how many of you know that Mecca had 3 malls? How many of you know that Mecca had a red district? How many of you know that in that red district there were casinos and nightclubs? And the youth were going there every night and every weekend. Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ grew up, was not that ideal place. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ tells us about his youth. He was 16 years old and he's like, oh my God, all youth my age are going and having fun. Meaning what? They go to music parties, concerts. What do we call them today? So he was a shepherd, so he told his partner, he said, take care of the sheep. I want to go and do like what youth do in Mecca. I want to go to that. There's music there. Whenever there's a wedding, a party, a concert, this and that. And do you know what was at concert? Alcohol. They were not drinking Zamzam. And Rasulullah walks in and he falls asleep. Allah protects him from that. Next time, he walks in, falls asleep. 3rd time, then he said, this is not meant for me. I'm not going anymore. He would fall asleep and wake up from the heat of the sun the next day. So you understand. When people say, Shaykh, you don't understand our struggle. No, may Allah help you. You are going through struggle. But so did the Prophet and the early believers. When you think of the early believers, how many of you know that most of them were young? Zubair ibn al-Awwam, 16 years old, he became Muslim. Zayd ibn Haritha, 12, 13, 14 years old, he became Muslim. Ali ibn Abi Talib, 10 years old, he became Muslim. Most of the people who believed in the earlies were either in their teens or 20s. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, probably 19, 20, right? Suhaib al-Rumi, also in his early 20s. Most of these names, they were not like, oh, this. The closest one in age to the Prophet ﷺ was Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He was 2 years younger than him. Uthman was younger, radiallahu ta'ala. Umar al-Khattab was younger, radiallahu ta'ala. They were all younger. Umar al-Khattab became Muslim at age 27. And some say at age 24. The man was in his 20s. So this is not, the people who believed in the Prophet ﷺ were not like old, boring, like, no, there was nobody, and it was not boring. And they had to face exactly everyone like, why do you keep talking about religion? Why do you keep talking about God? What's the point, man? Let's just go and have fun. Exactly how people talk today. So actually, if you're born and raised in the West or in America, the culture that you're looking around is exactly the same culture. Right? See-through clothes, shortcut clothes, exposing clothes. You know, if you go to San Francisco and walk naked today, you know you will get arrested and get a ticket because it's against the law. As liberal as San Francisco is, you cannot walk naked in San Francisco. And there is a group of people that every year have this protest that they go and walk, and they get arrested and they put them in jail and they put clothes on them and blah, blah, blah. It's a recurring. Mecca, The people of Mecca wanted to make more business, so they told the people who are coming, the clothes that you come with, you committed sin with it. So you have to get rid of it and buy clothes from us. So they asked him, what if we cannot afford? Oh, you make tawaf naked. Mecca at the time of the growth of the Prophet ﷺ was more liberal than San Francisco. Do you know that? So don't tell me the Prophet doesn't understand, I cannot relate to it, I don't know what is this. Let's just be real here and let's be academic. The Qurayshis used to sit in Dar al-Nadwa and look at men and women making tawaf and literally size them up and check them out and all the haram, and they would say, yeah, you should make tawaf naked. Around the Kaaba, tawaf naked. More liberal than San Francisco. So the culture was not that different. The economics. Economics built that the rich becomes richer and the poor becomes poorer. Do you know what's the first item made haram in Islam? Usury. That's the first haram. First or second year of al-Bi'tah. After Rasulullah received, still the revelation is fresh. And Allah Azza wa Jalla tells people, because it used to destroy the society. The economics, right? The business that they used to do, it's all similar. Okay, where do we live? Silicon Valley, Bay Area, Northern California. What's everyone talking about here? Business. What was the nature of the society that the Prophet ﷺ was born and raised in? What is the talk of everyone? They're all businessmen. They were so skillful, they made money from thin air. Why? Mecca has no agriculture, zero agriculture. They can barely find water. Thank God for Abdul Muttalib seeing that dream and discovering where's the location of Zamzam. They used to walk a mile or two outside Mecca just to get the water. No agriculture, no manufacturing sector, no textile. Everything in Mecca is imported. Silk, sundus wa istabrak. You know what sundus wa istabrak means? Sundus is from China, istabrak is from India. Indian silk and Chinese silk. The Silk Road. They used to bring. Pots and tools used to be made in Rome, which is today Syria, was part of the Roman Empire. Fresh food delivery. You know Whole Foods and Trader Joe's? Fresh food delivery used to come every day from where? Two places, from Yemen and from Ta'if. It used to come. So you will have grapes in Mecca. How in the world do you have grapes in Mecca? Fresh delivery from Ta'if or fresh delivery from Yemen. They made money out of thin air. Or just bring this. In Mecca, they had currency exchange booths. Where your money is from Persia, how much is that equal in Roman money? How much is that equal in African money? How is that equal in Yemeni money? How is that equal? You understand? They had to deal with 5, 6 different currencies. So when you think at the time of the Prophet, oh, these are old times, they used to live in tents. Please correct your information. People of Mecca did not live in tents. In Mecca, they had what? They had 1-story, 2-story, 3-story, and 4-story buildings. The Kaaba was tall. So you're not talking, the people who lived in tents, they lived outside Mecca, and they were called nomads, A'rab, because they keep on moving, right? So, and Allah talks about Al-A'rab in Al-Quran Al-Kareem as the nomads, right? And they lived around Mecca and they lived around Medina. But most of the people, the Prophet ﷺ had the advantage of growing up with Halima Sa'diyah, but for all intents and purposes, he was a city boy. He grew in the city. The first 4 years, they were taken out of the city because there was sickness. You know, they saw the flu, they used to come and kill so many babies, so they used to send them outside of Mecca. The temptations. Casinos, as I said, nightclubs, music, and music mixed with mixing and dancing and haram and this, and with the presence of slaves at that time. I mean, it was so liberal. There was so much things, way much worse, and the Prophet ﷺ grew in that, and the believers saw all of that, and that's why they're like, we don't want that. That's disgusting. We know what that does to the human. We know what alcohol does. We know what, gambling does. We know what this. So when they became Muslims, they actually knew what was the effect of all of these things. So, if we take care of that disconnect, right, as a second point. First point was we always have a role model. You always have one. Second point If you feel disconnected, please don't feel disconnected, because there's no times that are closer to the time of the Prophet ﷺ than our times. But then we ask, the other thing is like people are not impressed. So we ask the question, who the people are impressed with today? Who are people impressed with today? Okay, from nothing you make something, from like business people, right? Steve Jobs. Who else, right? Bill Gates. Who else, right? Okay, Warren Buffett. Okay, what's the common theme between all of them? Okay, so Steve Jobs was a Stanford dropout, Bill Gates was a Harvard dropout, and then you have Warren Buffett. It's like, yeah, he made the wealth from humble beginnings. The story is the Hewlett Packard, HP, they started from a garage. Facebook started from a garage. This and this, the idea of you started so small, you started so humble, and then you made it, and you made it big. Where? In the world of business, in the world of money. Okay, I get it. Everybody wants that? Okay, let's keep going. What else people are impressed with? Oh, Jeff Bezos. Sorry, Jeff Bezos also added to the list, right? But then who people? People who made a change. Who's impressed today? What are people impressed with? Okay, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, and Malcolm X, subhanAllah. Why? Because these people, they gave their life to the cause. They lived it. People are impressed with them because they were very giving, they were very selfless, they were very charitable, and that's why people are impressed with them. Oh, yeah, that's a good reason. You can understand why. These people made a dent in the society, made a change in history. So when people change history, people respect them and admire them. That's who people are impressed with. Right? And they impressed with Bill Gates because Bill Gates, what happened to him, he came back and now he's just having the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? And they doing, the vaccination and all of that around the world, and bringing new toilets to the places where there's no toilets and people are living in filth. It's something to appreciate, right? You don't have to agree with them in everything, but that's why people are impressed. Also, what is today impressing people other than that? You look at people who are so active. You find that Jeff Bezos and God knows who else, these startup companies, you find the mountain climbers, rock climbers, mountain hikers, and tree huggers, right? That's what they call them. They're impressed with them, like they have so much physique. People are impressed with people who can climb a mountain, right? Who can run a marathon, who can, right? Who go and to the top of the mountains and they contemplate, and then they come back with a business idea, or if they have a problem in their company, they will go golfing, right? And then they will come up with the solutions, right? People are impressed with people who are active, right? People who have climbed Mount Everest, God knows for how many times. There's this guy who climbed it 28 times, and he's still going, right? So, I guess it becomes easier after you do it one time. So, and then, what is today impressing people? What's the talk of the town? The different diets, right? You will find one common thing between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all of these, that they're physically fit, right? And then you look, what are people impressed with today? Hollywood's diets. Like what? Oh, raw food diet. Check that out. What is raw food diet? Just don't cook it. Okay, that makes it easy. Okay. Then what other diet? Oh, ketogenic diet. Just eat, things that are, not low carb, or low calorie diet. What is that? Just don't eat a lot. That's what is that, right? And then they're looking at, intermittent fasting. Right now, intermittent fasting, and I know all of you have heard this British journalist, the 5-2 diet. Fast 2 days and break your fast 5 days. And wow, you will never gain weight and you will lose weight always, right? If you just fast 2 days, lower your intake to 500 calories in these 2 days, and you can eat moderately whatever you want for the next 5 days. Whoa, gee, that sounds like fasting Mondays and what? And third, but let's not talk about that. Let's just keep going with it. Who the people are impressed with? People who are mentally healthy, sharp, even though they might not be physically, right? The mental sharpness, people are impressed with that. What else? People who care about the environment. Oh, the environment is dying and this and that. Let's go and do something. This is the talk of the town. So if we go back to the slide of let's move forward, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First job he had when he was young, 13 years old to 14 years old, he started with whatever the society could offer him at that point. The lowest job in Arabia is to be a boy shepherd, not like a master shepherd, a boy shepherd. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, I got paid, I used to be shepherd for Quraysh and they paid me pennies on the dollars. He said that he paid me pennies, but I took it because he didn't want to be a burden on his uncle Abu Talib. So he started with a job. What's the style of life today in America for the youth? You turn 16, you get your first job. Congratulations. The Prophet ﷺ did exactly the same thing. Started his first job as a shepherd very young. What did that cause? It made him very fit, because in Mecca, up and down, rocky mountains, middle of the heat, he must burn so many calories just by running after sheep in that harsh desert environment. What else? The Prophet ﷺ, from that humble beginnings, became what? Merchant. So from the lowest job to the highest job. And he started with almost no capital. In the hadith, it says that the Prophet ﷺ asked his uncle Abu Talib, I want to go to the market, I want to make business, I want to do business. And the Prophet ﷺ and his uncle said, but we don't have a capital. He said, it's okay, I'll start with something simple. So when he started looking and observing, where can I do business where it doesn't need a capital? He made a little bit capital, and then he said, there's another way. Someone could have the capital and I have the manpower. So there is someone who became Muslim later on. His name is As-Sa'ib ibn Abi Sa'ib. This As-Sa'ib says, Rasulullah was my partner in the days of Mecca. What a beautiful partner he was. What an easy partner he was. What an honest partner he was. So the Prophet ﷺ kept on thinking, okay, I don't have money. Okay, how can I find a partner? I'll do the job, he brings the money, we do this. As he's doing that, obviously when you put the effort, Allah sends someone your way. So Khadija sends him, hires him, radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she sends him. What does he do? He doubles the profit of what she usually used to make. Now here is what I want you to think with me. How mentally sharp was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how good of a businessman he was. You are in a market, everyone is lying. You're the only one who's telling the truth. Advantage or disadvantage? Disadvantage. Because everybody's lying through their teeth, and you're the only one who's telling the truth. You should make more money or less money? Less money, because everybody is having a hard time, right? Everybody is easy to lie. Oh, this is silk from China. No, this is silk from Syria, for example, right? Oh, this pottery was made in Syria. No, it was made in Egypt, right? Just cheating, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a Sadiq al-Amin. I want you to think with me just here for 30 seconds. If there was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Sadiq Amin, truthful, trustworthy in the market, would they call the Prophet a Sadiq al-Amin? The fact that they call him a Sadiq al-Amin, do you know what that tells you? He was the only one. Otherwise, it wouldn't be appropriate, because you will get confused. A Sadiq al-Amin, which one? No, he was the only one. And look how business mind he was, how very efficient and how mentally very alert. With being a Sadiq al-Amin, he doubles the business of Khadija and doubles the profit. The first year he doubled it, the second year he quadrupled it. How sharp do you have to be in order to do that? How much of a businessman you have to be? Without lying, without cheating, without. You have to know where to buy the goods from, the best price, and you have to know where to sell them for the best price, and you have to do it ethically without lying. That tells you what? He was very sharp, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when doing the business, he kept all the principles. Now, when you look at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, from age 35, from age 16, he became shepherd, so he's a mountain climber by default. By age 35, he started going to the mountain of Hira. 6.5 kilometers from the house of Khadija to the mount of Al-Nur to the cave of Hira. Today, when you go to the cave of Hira, with stairs, you go through the first part, which is relatively, it's all 45 degrees inclination. But what nobody's noticing, the last part, you start going vertical, almost on the stairs, 1, 2, 3. You know, for the Prophet ﷺ to make it to Ghar Hira, he not only had to be mountain hiker, he had to be rock climber. Because that end part was nothing but rock climbing, literally like rock climbing. And he did that for 5 years. And you know what's impressive? Sometimes Khadija would not wait for him to come. She would go up there and bring him the food. So she was a rock climber too. And physically fit too. Mountains and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Mount of Hira, receiving the revelation. Which mountain Allah used it to save the Prophet's life at immigration? The Mount of Thawr. Everybody went looking for the Prophet north because Medina is north of Mecca and Rasulullah went south to the mountain of Thawr, which is not an easy climb. It was very sharp. They say by the time of the Prophet, because he was catching up before the sunrise, by the time he reached there, you know, the mountains of Mecca are volcanic, and with the elements, it's all sharp like knives. The rocks are broken and they're all with edges. They said Abu Bakr, when he saw the feet of the Prophet ﷺ bleeding, he put him on his back and he started climbing, and the Prophet said, you don't have to do that. I can climb. But by the time he reached there, it was all bleeding from stepping on what? Because it's still not light, it's not daylight. They're trying to make it before daylight in Ghar Thawr. And then which mountain did the Prophet ﷺ climb and Allah used it to save his life also? In Medina, the mountain of Uhud. And then the Prophet ﷺ is saying what? Uhudun jabalun yuhibbuna wa nuhibbu. Uhud is a mountain that we love and it loves us. Right. Isn't that interesting? Right. Let's look at the diet of the Prophet ﷺ. When we look at the diet, low calorie diet. Tell me how much calories are you going to get from few dates a day and a cup of milk? Low calorie diet. Aisha radiallahu anha says, from the crescent to the crescent of the crescent, and you can count what? 2 to 3 months, we did not light a single fire in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to cook food. But they still have to eat. So what were they eating? Raw food diet. Because what were they eating? Dates and milk, dates and milk. And sometimes no milk and sometimes no dates. So the water had to suffice or the milk has to suffice for the whole meal. When Rasulullah ﷺ ate meat, he just ate meat. Right? He didn't eat meat every day. He ate meat once, from what we can decipher from the hadith, once every month, once every 3 months, not every day, every day, every day, every day. The Prophet didn't do that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all the impressive diets today, and the 5-2 diet, fasting 2 days and eating, you know, that's no-brainer, right? And all of these diets, the Prophet ﷺ was switching from one diet to another based on what? Based on what's available. When they moved to Medina, they say Rasulullah ﷺ after Asr, he would eat from whatever, what we call today parsley, what we call carrots, what we call cucumbers. They used to call it qitha, cucumbers, qitha. And qitha is mentioned in the Quran. It could go for cucumber, it could go for zucchini, it could go for eggplant. It's the family of something which has a lot of water inside it. They call it qitha, right? So the Prophet ﷺ ate from the vegetarian diet, right? And if it was vegetarian, it was cucumber, it must have been what? Vegan diet for sometimes. That day that he didn't drink milk, it was all vegan. Or it was vegetable, vegetarian diet. So when we look at these things and we move forward with the Prophet ﷺ, someone who brought women rights, someone who brought children rights, someone who brought, animal rights. If I'm going to start, let's say women rights, children rights, animal rights. A camel cries to the Prophet ﷺ. Rasulullah asks, who is the owner of this camel? So one of Al-Ansar says, me, Ya Rasulullah. He says, this camel is complaining to me that you're overloading it with work and you're not giving it enough food and drink. Ittaqillah, have taqwa of Allah with these animals that Allah put under your supervision. There was one camel that became vicious. Male camels can kill you easily. So this male camel became so vicious that the man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I cannot enter my farm. They used to build a wall around, they call it ha'it. Ha'it means wall, and inside it there is fruit trees, whatever that fruit trees, palms, whatever. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot enter my ha'it. This camel, every time I enter, it attacks me. So Rasulullah said, take me there. So he went there, and when he was about to enter, the Sahaba said, Rasulullah, we are afraid this camel will attack you. He said, don't worry. The camel was in the corner. The Prophet ﷺ walked through it. The camel walked through the Prophet, and then dangled its head and put it on the ground between the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. And Rasulullah ﷺ started, touching it and patting it. And then he said the same thing he said to the other man, this camel is complaining that you're overloading. That's why it turned vicious. Have mercy in these things that Allah put under your control. Animal rights. I will bring you like 15, 20 hadith that the Prophet ﷺ talking about. Don't hunt for sports. If you hunt, only hunt to eat because you're hungry. For this is a ruh that Allah created. If you are traveling and you see a tree, don't cut the tree. Because that tree, someone could pass by, and that tree makes tasbih of Allah. That tree is Allah. Don't cut trees that you don't need to cut, right? The Prophet ﷺ, even when he wanted to give an example, tell me a tree that is like a believer, it's always evergreen, and the name of your masjid is Evergreen Masjid. Tell me, and all the Sahaba, they were told this green, and they couldn't. Finally, Rasulullah ﷺ, imagine, they missed the obvious. He said it's the palm tree. It's green year round, and it gives you date. You throw rocks at it, it throws back at you dates. It's the example of the believer. Even in the language of the Prophet ﷺ, the language was, pro-human rights and pro-this. Did the Prophet change history or he didn't? Yes, he did. Did he make a dent in the universe or he didn't? Yes, he did. He made an actual dent by going on the journey of Al-Isra and Al-Mi'raj. That was a dent in history. So, it goes on. He was a peacemaker. What's the single accomplishment, biggest accomplishment in Arabia for Rasulullah ﷺ? From lawless society, in which tribes are fighting one another, to a society that is ruled by the rule of law. No more a tribe attacks another tribe, kill the men, take the woman as concubine, sell the children in the market. No more. Who was, even before receiving the revelation, when Quraysh wanted to fight each other, who puts the Hajar al-Aswad in its place? Rasulullah was the peacemaker. Turned an entire Arabian society from a lawless place to the most secure place that on planet Earth at that time. So the question that becomes, even when you look at the personality of the Prophet ﷺ, for the adults, I want you to appreciate this. Rasulullah ﷺ was a secure man. It didn't bother him to marry someone who's older than him, was married twice and had children, was richer than him, and was his boss. It's just too much. For a man, that's a lot to him. Like you will have that inferiority complex running in you 24/7. Nothing. Rasulullah was secure. A secure man, from inside, confident. It didn't bother him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When you think of the Prophet, Allah corrects the Prophet publicly in the Quran. Today we're saying, Allah, abasa wa tawalla an ja'ahu al-a'ma. Allah's correcting the Prophet in public. You know, when we do counseling, most people don't want to come to the Shaykh to do counseling or anyone else. They'd rather see the family collapse than do counseling. Why? Because we don't want people to know about us. Well, the family is collapsing. The world will know about you. No, we don't want anyone. Why? It's embarrassing. Why? It's private. Why? It's this. Do you know the family business of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a Quran that we recite today. Surah Al-Tahrim, Surah Al-Talaq. Allah Azza wa Jal is talking about the problems that happen between the wives of the Prophet ﷺ and him in public. And you're reciting it as a Quran. And that didn't bother him. And he was so confident, so secure. And he knew Allah is using him as an example for you and I. And Allah addressed the wives of the Prophet ﷺ directly in the Quran and gave them a choice. You want to have sabr and stay with him? Go ahead. You want to move on and get the pleasure of this world? I will tell the Prophet to divorce you, give you money, and let you enjoy dunya. They all chose Allah and His Messenger. You understand? The Prophet is in his house, in the rooms, Masjidul Nabi, the rooms, right? where now the qabr of the Prophet ﷺ. There were so many rooms. Room of Aisha, next to it is the room of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima, next to it is the room of, Hafsa, behind is the room. So there were the rooms. So Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab is passing by the rooms from the street and from the Masjid al-Nabi. What can he hear? The wives of the Prophet ﷺ arguing with him, and their voices is louder than the voice of the Prophet. So Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab gets so worked out. So he sticks his head out and he said, قَاتَلَكُنَّ اللَّهِ. He's talking to his daughter Hafsa. What is this? Your voice is raised above the voice of the Prophet. Do you know how we treat him outside? Rasulullah looked and said, Umar, can you please move on? Can you just go? Do you know how secure do you have to be that you can hear the Prophet ﷺ, his wives are arguing with him, and they're probably screaming and all of that, just normal husband-wife relationship, and that doesn't bother him? You know how secure do you have to be from inside that that doesn't bother you and doesn't intimidate you? So the question is that we become and we start asking that, like, are you impressed with the Prophet ﷺ? Because this whole thing of know him, love him, follow him, and I will add a fourth one. Today you need to defend him. That's not going to come out of a sheikh telling you to do that. That's going to come from inside your heart, a spark that sparks inside you and say, oh my God, it's like, that's true. Why am I not impressed? I'm impressed with everyone. Like if one person has one of the qualities of the Prophet, like a successful businessman, I'm so impressed, but not with the Prophet. I'm impressed with human rights activists who just focused on one concept, but not with the Prophet. I'm impressed with people who are so physically fit, mentally healthy, physically, emotionally, spiritually healthy, right? But not the Prophet. Imagine when the Prophet has all of them combined together. That should spark what? Something in you that says, okay, I think, okay, you know this whole thing of this is old times? I have a suggestion for you. Unfortunately, they're closing them one by one. They already closed Borders. Now there's some Barnes and Nobles open. Go to Barnes and Nobles. Do you know what's in Barnes and Nobles? Most of the books. It's about one of two things: history, biographies, and then culture, food and clothing in this. Do you know what people are reading every day? The biography of this, the biography of that, the biography of this, the biography of that, the biography of this, the biography of that, the memories of this, the memories of that, the memories of this, the memories of that. That's what people are reading. And the one person that you need to know the most, you're not reading his biography. And you know how many books have been written about the Prophet ﷺ? In English, in Urdu, in Persian, whatever you speak. But why is that? Because there's no trigger. The second that trigger happens, you're going to go and you will read and you will find more and more. Do you know what happened to the people who actually read academically about the Prophet ﷺ? Let me show you. The greatest philosophers and historians in the world. You're talking about Hercules. If I was there, I would have went there and washed his feet. This is while the Prophet ﷺ was alive. Next, we're talking about here George Wells, right? Who is known as a visionary of science despite his antagonism against the religion of Islam. Writes about the impact of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Muhammad gave the gift of light and power to the world. Antagonistic views of Islam. But because he's academic, he had to stop and say, this man did something right. And these are the leaders of. Next one, Laban. Muhammad is the greatest man the history has ever knew. French, this guy is French. And you know French, if you just want to know where the word croissant came from, they actually made a pastry that looks like the crescent, and they said, we're going to defeat our enemy, we're going to eat their symbol. So they made the symbol, the croissant, was because of a plateau battle that Muslims lost on the French, because Muslims were just kept on conquered Spain, and they went to France. Musa ibn Nusayr, rahmatullah alayh, and he didn't have enough soldiers, and it was snowing, and he didn't know any, so the army got it. Before they had that battle, they made the croissant. So just for information, you know. Alphonse de Lamont, or de Lamartine, The Muhammad is the prophet, the philosopher, orator, apostle, legislator, warrior, conqueror of ideas, restorer of all rational dogma for a cult without imagery, founder of 20 earthly empires, and one of the spiritual empire. This is Muhammad, is what he's writing. This is people who actually end up reading about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What do they see? George Bernard Shaw, you all know how much the world needs a man like Muhammad today, he writes. This is William James, well Durant. He's right. If we evaluate this great man's effect on people, we have to say that Prophet Muhammad is one of the greatest men in the human history. Interestingly. More and more. Just we can read and read and read. My choice, okay, can you go back? This is the man who wrote the greatest 100 men of history, Michael Hart. My choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others, but he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and secular level. And then we, the followers, are not impressed. And that's why, and we're not defending, and we don't know what to say. And when someone asks you, oh, I am not a scholar, you can go, what? No, you are a scholar. You are a scholar. You follow Prophet Muhammad ﷺ every day when you pray. So, if we become mentally, emotionally defeated, then we're going to be defeated on all levels. So many others, the list goes on. So, are you reading his biography? Are you falling in love with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Are you following him, his teachings? Are you referring to him in your conversations? Are you defending him? Why not passionate? Why not follow? But the idea here is, you know, subhanallah, the nature of the message of Islam. What does Allah want from you and I? He wants us to be, as much as possible, our entire life we have one goal, to be as close as we can to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The perfect human. And in that perfection, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made judgments, not sins. Sin, prophets don't commit sin, but he made judgments that Allah corrected. So even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being a human, Allah corrected some of his judgments in the Quran. So you can make mistakes. So people say, oh, I'm not an angel. Oh, I'm not like the Prophet. The Prophet is so good and I'm so bad. Okay, how many times does Allah have to say in the Quran, this man is a human, that's why he's your messenger. He's a human like you. But he's a superhuman in which he becomes a role model. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not nickeling and diming you. You're either 100% like Muhammad or I don't accept you. Allah is not asking you for that. He's not telling you either you become the prophet or no, or unacceptable. No, Allah is giving you as much as you can. Walk in the footstep. Try, change yourself from inside. It's a transformation. Allah wants you to change inside. Are you angry? Change your anger. Are you sad and depressed most of the time? You have an example in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He went through so much sadness. People say, oh, I went through so much, nobody. No. People, one son die for them, and the parents get knocked out for life. Al-Qasim, Abdullah, die in the life of the Prophet. Then Rasulullah loses Zainab, Ruqayya, and Kulthum. 5 children die from one wife. And then later, Ibrahim, boy number 3. 3 boys, 3 sons, and 3 daughters died of the Prophet ﷺ in his lifetime. His wife Khadija, his uncle Abu Talib. It was called the year of sadness. Right? His uncle Hamza. The most beloved people. The list goes on. And everyone who followed him and loved him. And some people, even the one, Rasulullah, how many of you know that Rasulullah ﷺ participated in digging the grave of his own mother? He was going back with Thuwayba from Medina and she became sick and sicker and sicker, then she died. So Thuwayba sat the mother of the Prophet ﷺ to the back. There was like a mountain there, and then she went and she started digging. And Rasulullah ﷺ was 6 years old. He started playing with her and digging, and then she took him behind the mountain, dragged the mother into the grave, covered her, and as she was finishing it, he was so like fidgety, like sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a child, right? He couldn't stay behind the mountain. He wanted to see what Thuwayba was doing. He came at the end of the burial and he started fighting with Thuwayba. My mother, why are you doing this to my mother? She said, it's okay, she's resting. Now we're gonna go back to your grandfather of Abdul Muttalib. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam buried Fatima bint Asad. Who's Fatima bint Asad? The wife of Abu Talib, the mother of Ali and Ja'far and this and that, who raised him for the rest from age 8 all the way. And if you hear the story, you cannot stop crying. The Prophet ﷺ dug the grave himself. The Prophet ﷺ went inside the grave and laid down, rubbed his body inside the grave and started crying. The Prophet got out. The Prophet ﷺ carries Fatima bint Asad. The Prophet put her in the grave. The Prophet prays janazah on her before. He puts her in the grave. He covers her. All while crying his heart out and saying, Kanat ummi ba'da ummi. She was my mother after my mother. So, how could a man who had so much personal tragedy at the same time lead the world, at the same time do everything, and how much do we need that? Do you know why we're not reaching our maximum potential in life? Do you know why we many times fail unnecessarily in our personal life, relationship life, economic? Because we're not taking the Prophet as a role model. Because when you have a role model like that, you aspire, you become better and better and better and better. So do you know how much you're losing by not taking the Prophet seriously in your life? And you keep on saying, just I love the Prophet, and just like but too much, You know how much you're losing because you're saying that? You're losing so much, and time is ticking. And your life is going across your eyes while you keep on just saying, oh, I cannot do it. Stop crying, stop doing that, get impressed, become passionate, go and learn, and look up. No matter what you're doing, business, look up. What? You want to change the world? Look, you want a social, you want personal relationships? You have an example in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah reward you. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.